Service entrance is that way, the doorman said apologetically, clearly following instructions from my stepmother Regina. Main doors are for event guests only. I nodded quietly, clutching my simple black purse as I walked around to the back of the Grand Plaza Hotel, one of New York's most prestigious venues and, unknown to my family, my most recent acquisition. The purchase documents had been finalized just hours ago, though the public announcement wasn't scheduled until 9 p.m. "Emily, darling, you actually came," Regina's voice dripped with false warmth as I finally made my way through the kitchen and into the ballroom where my father's 60th birthday celebration was underway. "Though you really should have mentioned you'd be attending." She emphasized the last word while eyeing my department store dress, a deliberate choice that fit the image they had of me, the unsuccessful daughter who just couldn't make it in the business world. My phone buzzed discreetly, final paperwork complete. The Grand Plaza Hotel chain ownership transfer recorded. Announcement prepared for 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. "I wouldn't miss Dad's birthday," I replied softly, accepting my seat assignment at a small table near the kitchen doors, far from the family's prominent position beneath the crystal chandeliers. "Still working at that little bookkeeping firm?" my stepbrother Richard asked, adjusting his Patek Philippe watch, purchased with the trust fund money that should have been split with me. "You know, I could always find you something entry-level at Sterling Investments." Sterling Investments, the company my father had handed to Richard while declaring me too soft for finance. The same company whose major clients had been quietly transferring their accounts to my firms for the past year. "The bookkeeping is steady work," I said, maintaining the careful facade I'd built over the past decade while assembling my hidden empire. Another message flashed on my phone. Sterling Investments client exodus reaching critical levels. Acquisition opportunity identified. "Emily's always been more suited to simpler work," Regina pronounced, her diamond necklace catching the light. "Not everyone has the business instinct, dear." I suppressed a smile, thinking of the morning's board meetings where I'd orchestrated the acquisition of 3 luxury hotel chains, including the Grand Plaza. My business instincts had built Phoenix Global Holdings into one of the world's largest private investment firms, all hidden behind layers of shell companies and discrete subsidiaries. "Remember when Emily thought she could run Sterling's international division?" Richard laughed, swirling his 30-year-old scotch. "Dad made the right call there. She couldn't even handle the junior analyst position." That junior analyst position had given me inside access to Sterling's weaknesses, information I'd used to systematically dismantle their international presence through strategic competitor acquisitions. "How's that studio apartment working out?" Regina inquired with practiced concern. "Still in that diverse neighborhood?" The studio apartment was a maintained fiction, just like my modest lifestyle and struggling career. My real residence occupied 3 floors of a building I owned on Park Avenue, though they still thought I lived in Queens. "I'm managing," I replied, checking another alert. "Hotel staff briefed on ownership change. Awaiting your signal for public announcement." "You really should let Richard help you with investments," Regina persisted. "Even a small portfolio would be better than living paycheck to paycheck." Richard nodded sagely, unaware that Phoenix Global Holdings controlled more assets than Sterling Investments had ever managed. "Start with something simple. Maybe some index funds?" My phone lit up again. Asian markets opening. Hotel chain acquisition creating significant buzz. Press requesting confirmation. "I'll think about it," I said mildly, watching the family that had banished me to the service entrance hold court in what was now my hotel. The same family that would soon learn that their unsuccessful daughter owned not just this venue, but a global portfolio of luxury properties and investment firms. "Did you at least take that financial literacy course I recommended?" Richard asked, drawing snickers from his socialite friends. "Basic budgeting could help you afford a better wardrobe." The basic budgeting I practiced involved overseeing trillion-dollar investment strategies and orchestrating international corporate acquisitions over breakfast. "Emily just needs to accept her limitations," Regina added, patting my hand with rehearsed sympathy. "We can't all be financial geniuses like Richard." My phone vibrated. Wall Street Journal front page secured. "Your photo and profile ready for tomorrow's edition." I thought about the empire I'd built while they assumed I was processing payroll in a back office. The global network of hotels, investment firms, and real estate holdings, all operating under different names, all leading back to Phoenix Global Holdings and to me. The service entrance suits you, Richard smirked, straightening his bespoke suit. Keeps you connected to the real world, doesn't it? If he only knew that I own not just the hotel's service entrance, but every entrance to every luxury property in his social circle's rotation. The clubs where he flaunted his wealth, the restaurants where he held power lunches, the resorts where he planned vacations, all quietly acquired by my various holding companies. 9 p.m. approaches, my chief of operations texted. Hotel manager standing by for announcement. I looked around the opulent ballroom at Richard boasting about his latest power moves, at Regina orchestrating her social hierarchy, at my father basking in the success of his real business heir. In less than 30 minutes, they would learn that the daughter they'd relegated to the service entrance actually owned the entire building and much, much more. Proceed as planned, I texted back, settling in to watch the carefully constructed world of the Sterling family crumble from my perfect vantage point near the kitchen doors. At precisely 9 p.m., the Grand Plaza Hotel's manager approached the central podium, tapping gently on the microphone. The sound echoed through the ballroom, drawing attention from the gathered elite of New York's financial world. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, his voice carrying a hint of carefully concealed excitement. As is tradition at the Grand Plaza, we'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our owner who is present here tonight. Richard straightened his tie, clearly assuming this was another opportunity to network with the hotel's wealthy ownership group. Regina adjusted her pearls, preparing her practiced social smile. It gives me great pleasure to announce that as of 3 p.m. today, the Grand Plaza Hotel chain, along with our sister properties worldwide, has been acquired by Phoenix Global Holdings. The first ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Phoenix Global Holdings was a name that inspired both awe and fear in financial circles. The mysterious conglomerate that had been systematically acquiring luxury properties and investment firms across the globe. And we are honored to have our new owner here with us tonight, the manager continued, his eyes finding mine. Ms. Emily Sterling, CEO of Phoenix Global Holdings. The champagne glass in Regina's hand shattered. This is a joke, Richard stammered, his Patek Philippe suddenly feeling like a child's toy watch. Emily does bookkeeping. She processes payroll. My executive assistant Catherine materialized beside me, carrying a sleek carbon fiber briefcase. Ms. Sterling, the acquisition documents you requested. Thank you, Catherine, I said, rising from my seat by the kitchen. I believe my family might want to review them. The ballroom had fallen into stunned silence, broken only by the sound of urgent whispers and frantically tapping phones as the city's financial elite realized that the woman they'd watched enter through the service door was actually one of the world's most powerful business leaders. But your apartment in Queens, Regina managed weakly, is part of a low-income housing initiative we're developing, I confirmed as Catherine distributed detailed portfolios to the family gathering. Phoenix Global Holdings believes in maintaining perspective. Something about using service entrances keeps one grounded. Richard was frantically scrolling through news alerts on his phone, each headline confirming his worst fears. Phoenix Global Holdings acquires Grand Plaza Hotel chain in $8.2 billion deal. Mysterio revealed. Emily Sterling steps into spotlight. Sterling family daughter behind year's biggest luxury acquisitions. The bookkeeping firm, he whispered, his face ashen. Sterling Financial Services. Is one of our smaller subsidiaries, I nodded. Excellent for gathering intelligence on potential acquisitions. It's amazing what people reveal to their accountants. Catherine continued distributing documents, comprehensive reports detailing Phoenix Global's holdings, including several properties and businesses my family frequently bragged about patronizing. The country club where you hold board meetings, I said to Richard, whose membership suddenly seemed far less exclusive, was acquired last month. Along with the private jet service you use, the yacht club where you dock your boat, and that secret wine cellar you're so proud of. The screens around the ballroom, meant for displaying birthday photos, now showed financial news networks breaking down Phoenix Global's emergence from the shadows. Market analysts were calculating the true scope of my empire, with numbers that made Sterling Investments look like a corner store operation. The financial literacy course, Regina said faintly, still staring at the portfolio in her hands. When Richard suggested, was actually developed by my team, I confirmed. We use it to identify investment opportunities. Your recommended basic budgeting spreadsheet? That's how we value acquisition targets. My phone buzzed continuously now, calls from CNBC, Bloomberg, Forbes, all wanting the first interview with the revealed CEO of Phoenix Global Holdings. The same business reporters who'd ignored me at Sterling events were now desperately vying for my attention. Your failed attempt at international finance, Richard said slowly, realization dawning in his eyes. When Dad said you couldn't handle it. Provided the perfect cover, I replied. While Sterling Investments was celebrating my departure, Phoenix Global was acquiring its international competitors. We now control 60% of the market you were trying to enter. The next hour transformed the lavish birthday celebration into an impromptu business symposium. CNBC had somehow gotten a camera crew in place, their headline banner reading, Phoenix Global CEO revealed, the servant's entrance to $1 trillion empire. Ms. Sterling, a Wall Street Journal reporter called out, sources say Phoenix Global is behind the recent luxury hotel consolidation across Asia and Europe. Can you confirm your ownership of the Ritz portfolio? All ongoing acquisitions remain confidential, I replied smoothly, watching Richard's complexion turn paler. The brother who'd mocked my international business acumen was just realizing I controlled most of the luxury properties he'd bragged about visiting. The investment advice, Regina whispered, still scrolling through Phoenix Global's holdings on her tablet. When you asked about mutual funds last Christmas. Was market research, I confirmed. Every time you laughed at my basic questions, I was identifying another acquisition target. Those simple concepts I pretended not to understand? Each one led to another multi-billion-dollar transaction. Catherine approached with another set of documents, the complete organizational chart of my business empire. Hotels, investment firms, real estate holdings, all carefully structured under the Phoenix Global umbrella. Your credit card application, Richard said weakly, remembering last year's family dinner. When you got declined at Sterling Bank. Was at a bank I already owned, I nodded. Sometimes maintaining cover requires experiencing what regular people deal with. While you were mocking my poor credit, I was finalizing the purchase of the bank's parent company. My secure phone lit up with urgent messages. The World Economic Forum wanted me as their keynote speaker. The Business Roundtable was requesting emergency membership consideration. The Financial Times needed comments on my leadership philosophy. The networking events you banned me from, I said to Regina, whose social influence suddenly seemed microscopic, were actually quite productive. It's amazing what people reveal when they think they're talking to the help. The ballroom screens now displayed Phoenix Global's true reach. Luxury hotels, private clubs, exclusive resorts, all connected through a complex web of holding companies and strategic partnerships. Your apartment hunting last spring, Richard remembered suddenly, when you couldn't afford Manhattan, was a survey of potential acquisitions, I replied. While you were laughing at my budget constraints, I was buying entire buildings, including that penthouse you tried to purchase last month. The board that rejected you? Reports to me. Catherine distributed the next round of documents, detailed analyses of Phoenix Global's luxury portfolio, including properties the Sterling family frequented but could never afford to own. Starting tomorrow, I announced to the stunned room, Phoenix Global begins its comprehensive rebranding of the Grand Plaza hotel chain. We're implementing a $30 billion renovation program, including some interesting changes to the entrance policy. My executive team continued circulating through the ballroom, distributing business cards and scheduling meetings with shell-shocked luxury industry executives who suddenly realized their ultimate boss had been using the service entrance. By the way, I added, watching Richard check his hotel membership cards that would soon be obsolete. That exclusive resort in the Maldives where you're planning your summer vacation? We acquired it this morning. I'm thinking of turning it into a marine research center. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just buying their playground. It's transforming it into something meaningful while they scramble for new dinner party conversation topics. Your social club memberships, I said to Regina as her carefully cultivated network began gravitating toward my corner of the ballroom, might need revision. Phoenix Global has very different standards for access. We're especially interested in how people treat service entrance users. The next day's business press would call it the most spectacular revelation in luxury industry history. But it was more than that. It was proof that true power doesn't come from using the right entrance. It comes from owning all the entrances while others waste time guarding them. "Catherine," I called out as we prepared for an emergency board meeting, "please ensure everyone receives Phoenix Global's new guest policy handbook. Especially the chapter about judging people by their point of entry. Because the greatest success isn't about maintaining social hierarchies. It's about quietly building something revolutionary while they're too busy monitoring the door." "Oh, and Richard?" I turned back one final time. "That secret wine cellar you love showing off to clients? I bought the vineyard that supplies it. Amazing what you can acquire while people think you can't afford the tasting menu." My secure phone buzzed again. Luxury brands requesting partnerships, hotel chains seeking mergers, real estate developers suddenly realizing who really controlled their market's future. "The financial modeling course you said was too advanced for me," I said to Richard, who was still trying to process that his favorite hotels were now mine. "Actually helped me value your favorite properties. Turns out they were all underpriced." As I walked toward my waiting executive team, I heard Regina's panicked voice. "Call our social chairs. Call our club managers. Call anyone." But what she didn't know was that they all worked for me now. Every luxury venue, every exclusive club, every high-end service they might turn to was ultimately connected to Phoenix Global's network. "Should we reveal the other acquisitions?" Catherine asked as we entered my real transportation. Not a subway card, but a private elevator to the penthouse helipad. "Not yet," I smiled, watching the family chaos unfold below. Let them wonder what else the service entrance user owns. After all, the Grand Plaza was just the beginning.
The kitchen was quiet except for the soft hum of the dishwasher when Emma stormed in, waving an envelope like a victory flag. Her eyes gleamed with a cruel satisfaction I'd never seen in my 17-year-old daughter before. "Look what I got," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. She slapped the envelope onto the counter between us. "DNA results. Want to explain why Dad isn't showing up as my biological father?" My hands stilled over the sink where I'd been washing dishes. I carefully dried them on a kitchen towel, buying myself precious seconds to steady my racing heart. I'd known this day might come, but I hadn't expected it like this, hadn't expected the look of smug triumph on my daughter's face. "How long have you been lying to us?" Emma demanded, crossing her arms. "Does Dad even know, or have you been playing him for a fool all these years too?" I took a deep breath, studying her face, the face that looked so much like mine at her age, yet held none of the warmth or understanding I desperately needed from her right now. "Sit down, Emma," I said quietly. "This isn't a conversation we should have standing up." She scoffed but dropped into one of the kitchen chairs, still radiating righteous anger. "Fine. Explain how you've been living a lie for the past 17 years. This should be good. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and my daughter had just unknowingly opened a door to the past I'd spent nearly 2 decades trying to keep firmly shut. Not because I was ashamed, but because some truths are too heavy for children to bear. Some stories need to wait until the right moment, and this wasn't it. But Emma had forced my hand. I sat down across from her, folding my hands on the table. "First, I need you to understand something. Everything I've done, every choice I've made, has been to protect you and give you the best life possible." Emma rolled her eyes. "Save the mom speech. I want the truth." "The truth," I said carefully, "is complicated. And before we go any further, I need to know exactly what you're hoping to accomplish here. Are you looking for answers, or are you just trying to hurt me?" She faltered for a moment, her confidence wavering. "I deserve to know who my real father is," she said finally, but her voice had lost some of its edge. I nodded slowly. "Yes, you do. But not like this. Not as a weapon you can use to try to tear this family apart." "Family?" She laughed bitterly. "What family? It's all built on lies." "No," I said firmly. "It's built on love. Your father, the man who raised you, who has loved you every single day of your life. He knows you're not biologically his. He's always known." Emma's eyes widened, her carefully constructed narrative beginning to crack. "What? David and I met when I was already pregnant with you," I explained, watching her face carefully. "I was 22, scared, and alone. He didn't have to stay. He didn't have to love us. But he chose to, every single day. But, Emma's voice trembled. But why didn't you tell me? I reached across the table, grateful when she didn't pull away from my touch. Because some stories need time. Because you needed to be old enough to understand that family isn't just about DNA. It's about choice. It's about love. Then who is my biological father? She asked, her voice smaller now. I closed my eyes briefly, memories washing over me. His name was Michael. And that story, that's the part I've been trying to protect you from. I want to know, Emma insisted, but the smugness was gone, replaced by something more vulnerable. I need to know. I took another deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation I'd hoped to have years from now, when she was older, when she could better understand the complexities of love and loss and the choices we make when we're young. I met Michael when I was in college. I began, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. He was charming, ambitious, and I thought I was in love. We dated for nearly a year before I got pregnant. Emma leaned forward, hanging on every word. What happened? When I told him about the pregnancy, I paused, choosing my words carefully. He made it clear he wasn't ready for that responsibility. He had plans. Law school, a career, a future that didn't include a baby. He told me to take care of it, and when I refused, he disappeared. Just like that, Emma whispered. I nodded. Just like that. I tried to contact him a few times, but he blocked my number, changed his email. His parents, your biological grandparents, they told me to stay away, offered me money to keep quiet about the whole thing. Did you take it? Emma asked, her eyes wide. No, I said firmly. I didn't want their money. I wanted to give you a life filled with love, not secrets and shame. I dropped out of college, moved back home with my parents, and started working 2 jobs to prepare for your arrival. I watched as Emma processed this information, her earlier bravado completely gone. But then how did you meet Dad? I mean, David? A small smile crossed my face at the memory. I was working at a coffee shop, 7 months pregnant and exhausted. David was a regular customer, always kind, always left a good tip. One day, I was so tired I nearly fainted while taking his order. He helped me sit down, brought me water, and stayed with me until my shift ended. And he didn't care that you were pregnant with someone else's baby. He said it was like getting 2 miracles for the price of 1. I replied, feeling tears prick at my eyes. He started coming by more often, always checking on me, bringing me healthy snacks because he'd read somewhere that pregnant women needed extra nutrients. Emma's lip trembled. He really chose us. He did. I confirmed. We got married when you were 6 months old. He insisted on legally adopting you, said he wanted the world to know you were his daughter in every way that mattered. That's why his name is on your birth certificate, because he chose to be your father. The kitchen fell silent as Emma absorbed this information. I could see the conflict on her face, the way her earlier certainty had crumbled in the face of a truth far more complex than she'd imagined. I'm sorry, she finally whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I thought I was exposing some terrible secret. I wanted to hurt you because I've been so angry lately, and I didn't even know why. I moved around the table to pull her into my arms, feeling her body shake with sobs. You're 17, sweetheart. Being angry is part of growing up. But next time, talk to me. Ask me. Don't try to weaponize our history. She nodded against my shoulder. Does Dad, is he going to be mad about the DNA test? No, I said softly, stroking her hair. He's always known this day would come eventually. We both did. We just hoped you'd come to us first, that we could tell you the story together, when you were ready to hear it. I want to hear it, Emma said, pulling back to wipe her eyes. All of it, and I want Dad here too. I smiled, reaching for my phone. I'll call him, but Emma? She looked up at me. Remember this feeling? Remember how different the truth was from what you imagined? Sometimes the stories we tell ourselves about other people's choices, they're not nearly as simple as we think. As I dialed David's number, I watched Emma sink back into her chair, the DNA results forgotten on the counter. She looked younger suddenly, more vulnerable, like the little girl who used to crawl into our bed during thunderstorms. David answered on the second ring. Hey, love. Everything okay? Emma took a DNA test, I said simply. It's time for that conversation we've been preparing for. There was a pause, then his warm, steady voice came through the line. I'll be home in 20 minutes. We'll do this together, like we've done everything else. I hung up and looked at Emma, who was watching me with red-rimmed eyes. He's on his way, I told her. Are you ready to hear the whole story? She nodded, and I could see the change in her. The way her earlier defiance had transformed into something softer, more open. Yeah, she said quietly. I think I am. David arrived exactly 20 minutes later, his footsteps echoing through the house as he entered. I watched Emma tense slightly at the sound, her earlier confidence completely dissolved. When he appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in his work clothes, his eyes immediately found Emma. Hey, sweetheart, he said softly, setting his briefcase down. Your mom filled me in. Emma's lip trembled. Dad, I. But before she could finish, David crossed the room and pulled her into a tight hug. It's okay, he murmured into her hair. We've been waiting for this day. I just wish you felt you could come to us first. I watched them embrace, my heart swelling with love for this man who had chosen us, who had never once made Emma feel like she was anything less than his whole world. When they finally pulled apart, David kept one arm around Emma's shoulders as he sat down beside her. So, he said, looking between us. Where should we start? Mom told me about meeting you, Emma said quietly, about how you chose us. David smiled, his eyes meeting mine across the table. Best decision I ever made. But there's more to the story, isn't there, Sarah? I nodded, knowing we had to tell her everything now. No more protecting her from the harder truths. Yes, Emma needs to know about what happened after, about Michael's attempts to come back. Emma's head snapped up. What? He tried to come back? When? I took a deep breath, feeling David's steady presence giving me strength. When you were 5 years old, Michael showed up at our door. He'd seen a photo of you at his parents' house. They'd been keeping tabs on us through mutual friends. Though I didn't know it at the time. What did he want? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He said he'd made a mistake. I continued, the memory still sharp after all these years. He'd finished law school, started a successful career, gotten married. But something was missing. He said he couldn't stop thinking about the daughter he'd abandoned. David's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained calm. Tell her what you told him, Sarah. I reached across the table to take Emma's hand. I told him he'd lost the right to be your father the day he walked away. That being a parent isn't something you can decide to do only when it's convenient. Your dad, David, he'd been there for every moment, every skinned knee, every nightmare, every triumph. He was your father in every way that mattered. Did Michael fight you on it? Emma asked. He threatened to take us to court, David answered, his voice steady. Said he had resources now, could prove he was the biological father and demand partial custody. Emma's eyes widened. What did you do? We fought back, I said simply. We had years of documented abandonment, proof that he'd rejected any responsibility when I was pregnant. Plus, David had legally adopted you. The law was on our side. But more importantly, David added, squeezing Emma's shoulder, you were old enough to be affected by any custody battle. We weren't going to put you through that trauma just because Michael suddenly decided he was ready to play dad. He backed off eventually, I continued. I think he realized that pursuing it would only hurt everyone involved, especially you. But he did make one request. What was it? Emma asked. He asked that when you were old enough to understand, we tell you the truth. Tell you that he regretted his choices, that he'd grown up and realized what he'd thrown away. I paused, studying my daughter's face. We agreed, but on our terms, when we felt you were ready. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing everything. Do you know where he is now? David and I exchanged a look. Yes, I said carefully. He's still in the area, actually. He has his own law firm downtown. 2 other children with his wife. My half-siblings, Emma whispered, testing the words. Biologically, yes, David said gently. But Emma, you need to understand something. Just because you share DNA with someone doesn't mean they have a right to be in your life. That's your choice to make, when and if you're ready. Emma looked up at him, tears in her eyes. But you'll always be my real dad, right? No matter what. David pulled her close again, his own eyes glistening. Always, sweetheart. Nothing could ever change that. I watched them together, remembering all the moments that had led us here. The day David had first held Emma, his eyes full of wonder. Her first steps, taken toward him with complete trust. The father-daughter dances, the bedtime stories, the countless small moments that had built their unshakable bond. "I feel so stupid," Emma said finally, wiping her eyes. "I thought I was going to expose this huge scandal, but instead you learned that family is more complicated and beautiful than just biology," I finished for her. "That love is a choice we make every day." The DNA test, David added, "It doesn't change who we are. It doesn't erase our history or diminish our love for you. If anything, it just confirms what I've always known, that choosing to be your father was the greatest gift of my life." Emma reached for the envelope still sitting on the counter, picking it up with trembling fingers. Can we throw this away? I don't need it anymore." I smiled, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "Of course, sweetheart." We watched as she tore the envelope in half, then quarters, letting the pieces fall into the trash. As she did, I saw something shift in her expression, a kind of peace settling over her features. "Mom," she said softly. "Dad, I'm sorry. For trying to hurt you, for not trusting you enough to just ask." "We understand," I assured her. "Growing up means questioning things, trying to figure out who you are. But next time you have questions about your past, come to us first. We've never wanted to hide anything from you. We just wanted to protect you until you were ready for the whole truth." David nodded in agreement. "And now that everything's out in the open, we can talk about what you want to do next. If you have questions about Michael, about your biological heritage, we'll help you find those answers when you're ready." Emma shook her head. "I don't think I want to know right now. Maybe someday," but she looked between us, her expression softening. "Right now, I just want to be here, with my real family." The three of us sat there in the kitchen as the evening light filtered through the windows, our family stronger for having weathered this storm together. Emma's DNA test, meant to be a weapon, had instead become a bridge to understanding, a reminder that the bonds that matter most aren't the ones we're born with, but the ones we choose to nurture and protect. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, David and I sat on the back porch, his arm around my shoulders as we looked up at the stars. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, leaning into his warmth. "Better than okay. I think this needed to happen. Maybe not exactly the way it did, but Emma needed to know the truth. She's stronger than we give her credit for," David mused. "Just like her mother." I turned to look at him, this man who had stepped into our lives and chosen to make us his family. "Thank you," I whispered. "For everything. For loving us both so completely." He smiled, pulling me closer. "Thank you for letting me, for trusting me with your heart and with Emma's." Inside, we could hear Emma moving around in her room, probably getting ready for bed. The sound was so familiar, so precious, a reminder of all the ordinary moments that made up our extraordinary love story. "Do you think she'll want to meet him someday?" I asked quietly. "Michael?" David was quiet for a moment, considering. "Maybe, and if she does, we'll support her. But I think today showed her something important, that the truth isn't always what we expect it to be, and sometimes the family we choose is stronger than the family we're born into." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over me. The secret I'd carried for so long wasn't a secret anymore. And somehow, that made everything clear. Our family wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was built on choice, on love, on the daily decision to be there for each other. Emma's DNA test, meant to break us apart, had only brought us closer together. It had shown her, and reminded us, that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stay, who choose to love us through every storm, who build a life with us one moment at a time. As David and I sat there under the stars, I thought about all the paths that had led us here. Every choice, every struggle, every moment of doubt and faith. And I knew with absolute certainty that we had created something beautiful. A family bound not by DNA, but by something far stronger. The power of unconditional love. The crystal wine glasses clinked as Elizabeth Montgomery raised a toast, her perfectly manicured hands steady despite the third glass of Bordeaux. "To family success," she announced, her eyes fixing on me with barely concealed disdain. "Well, most of the family's success." I sat quietly at the massive dining table, watching my mother-in-law perform for her usual Sunday dinner audience. My husband James shifted uncomfortably beside me, but remained silent. He never did have the courage to stand up to his mother. Such a shame about your little boutique, Christine. Elizabeth continued, false sympathy dripping from every word. I warned James that retail was such a risky business. Not everyone is cut out for the corporate world. My name is Christine Chen, and at 34, I was watching my mother-in-law celebrate what she thought was my financial ruin. After 2 years of her careful sabotage, she believed she finally succeeded in proving I wasn't worthy of her precious son or the Montgomery family name. These things happen, I said mildly, taking a small sip of wine. Business is unpredictable. Elizabeth's smile widened. She loved it when I played the defeated daughter-in-law. Of course, dear. Not everyone can build something lasting like Montgomery Cosmetics. 30 years of success doesn't come easily. I thought about the documents sitting in my home office, signed and ready for tomorrow morning's board meeting. Elizabeth had no idea that while she'd been busy destroying my small chain of boutiques, I'd been orchestrating the biggest business coup in her company's history. Mom, James attempted weakly, maybe we should talk about something else. Why? Elizabeth cut him off. We need to discuss your future, James. Now that Christine's financial situation has changed, perhaps it's time to consider other options. I knew exactly what she meant by other options. Victoria Pierce, the daughter of Elizabeth's best friend, had recently returned to town after her divorce. Elizabeth had been not so subtly pushing her towards James for months. My phone buzzed quietly. A message from Marcus, my lawyer. Everything's set for tomorrow. Board votes confirmed. She won't know what hit her. I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment to compose myself. In the massive marble bathroom of the Montgomery mansion, I stared at my reflection and thought about how it had all started. 3 years ago, I'd been the rising star of the retail world. My boutique chain, Style Haven, was expanding rapidly, featured in major fashion magazines, and attracting attention from luxury brands. Then I made what Elizabeth considered my fatal mistake. I married her son. James and I had met at a charity gala. He was sweet, kind, and completely dominated by his mother. But I loved him and foolishly thought love would be enough to overcome Elizabeth's disapproval of my new money status and Chinese-American background. The sabotage started small. Elizabeth would casually mention to her society friends that my boutiques were having quality issues. Key suppliers suddenly canceled contracts. Landlords unexpectedly raised rents or refused to renew leases. Each problem seemed random, but I knew better. What Elizabeth didn't know was that I'd been recording everything. Every casual phone call where she urged suppliers to drop me. Every meeting where she pressured property owners. Every subtle threat she made to anyone who did business with Style Haven. But more importantly, she never bothered to look closely at the group of investment firms that had been quietly buying up shares of Montgomery Cosmetics over the past year. Why would she? The companies all seemed independent, legitimate, with no connection to me. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. Final share count confirmed. You control 62% through the holding companies. Board meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. I returned to the dining room just as Elizabeth was starting another story about her business success. It's all about connections, really, she was saying. The right people, the right background. You understand, don't you, Christine? Perfectly, I replied, thinking about the connections I'd made while building my case against her. The suppliers who'd provided documentation of her interference. The property owners who'd recorded her threats. The executives at her company who were tired of her outdated leadership and discriminatory practices. James touched my hand under the table. A small gesture of support he only dared when his mother wasn't looking. He had no idea what was coming either. I kept him in the dark to protect him, and to ensure his reactions tomorrow would be genuine. More wine, Christine? Elizabeth offered, her smile sharp. Drown your sorrows. No, thank you, I said. I have an early meeting tomorrow. She couldn't resist the opening. Oh, still trying to save your little shops? Sometimes it's better to just admit defeat gracefully. I thought about the times I cried in private over her sabotage. The nights spent rebuilding after each attack. The careful planning and patience it had taken to turn her own tactics against her. Actually, I said, it's a corporate consulting meeting. I've been exploring new opportunities. Elizabeth's smile turned condescending. How nice. Perhaps something more appropriate to your skills, retail sales perhaps? James started to object, but I squeezed his hand, stopping him. Let her have this moment. Let her think she won. Tomorrow would be soon enough for truth. As dinner wound down, Elizabeth pulled James aside for a private word, one she ensured was just loud enough for me to hear. "Victoria's looking lovely since her return," she said. "You remember how close you two were in college? Sometimes first choices aren't the best choices, darling." I gathered my things, pretending not to hear. Elizabeth Montgomery had spent 3 years trying to drive me out of her family and destroy my business. She thought she'd succeeded. In less than 12 hours, she would learn how wrong she was. "Christine," she called as we were leaving, "don't be a stranger. Just because things didn't work out with your business doesn't mean you're not still family, in a way." I turned back, unable to resist one small hint. "Thank you, Elizabeth. You've taught me so much about business, about how to acquire things people don't want to let go of, about patience. Tomorrow should be interesting." She frowned slightly, but I was already walking out, James following behind me. In the car, he apologized again for his mother's behavior. "I don't know why she's like this. I should have said something." "It's fine," I assured him. "Everything's going to change very soon." "What do you mean?" I patted his hand. "Just be ready for tomorrow's news, and remember that I love you." That night, I reviewed everything one final time. The evidence of Elizabeth's sabotage, carefully compiled and ready to be released if needed. The shareholding documents showing my controlling interest in Montgomery Cosmetics. The board votes already secured. My phone lit up with a final message from Marcus. "All systems go for tomorrow. Elizabeth won't know what hit her." I smiled, thinking of Elizabeth's smug toast to family success. Tomorrow would redefine exactly what that meant. The Montgomery Cosmetics boardroom felt different at 8:45 a.m. as I took my seat at the head of the table. Elizabeth's usual chair, but she didn't know that yet. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see her arriving in the parking lot, strutting toward the building with her usual air of entitlement. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked quietly, arranging the documents we need. "Once we start, there's no going back." I nodded, thinking of all the nights I'd spent building up to this moment. She chose this path, Marcus. She just didn't expect anyone to fight back. Elizabeth swept into the room at exactly 9 a.m., faltering slightly when she saw me. "Christine, what are you doing here?" Her eyes narrowed as she noticed me in her seat. "That's my place." "Not anymore," I said calmly as the other board members filed in. "Please take any other seat. We have a lot to discuss." "This is ridiculous," she snapped, remaining standing. "I'm the CEO of this company. I don't know what game you're playing." Actually, Marcus interrupted smoothly. "As of this morning, Ms. Chen is the majority shareholder of Montgomery Cosmetics, controlling 62% of voting shares through various investment vehicles. This emergency board meeting has been called to address the leadership transition." The color drained from Elizabeth's face. "That's impossible. I would know if someone was buying up shares." "Would you?" I asked, opening the folder in front of me. "Like you knew who was really behind the Pacific Ridge Investment Group or Summit Valley Holdings? You've been so busy trying to destroy my business that you never noticed who was buying into yours." The other board members were watching with barely concealed interest. Many of them had their own stories of Elizabeth's tyrannical leadership and discriminatory practices. "This is absurd," Elizabeth sputtered. "James will never allow." The boardroom door opened and James walked in. I called him early this morning, finally explaining everything. He looked pale but determined. "Hello, Mother," he said quietly, taking a seat beside me. Elizabeth's face twisted with rage and betrayal. "You knew about this?" "I just found out," James replied. "And after hearing everything, all the ways you tried to destroy Christine's business, all the manipulation, I fully support her taking control." "The votes are already secured," Marcus added, distributing documents to everyone. "The board has agreed that a change in leadership is necessary for the company's continued growth and ethical operation." I watched Elizabeth's carefully maintained facade crack as she realized the depth of what was happening. "You can't do this to me," she whispered. "This company is my life. Like my business was mine." I asked quietly, "Before you systematically destroyed it?" "I have evidence of everything, Elizabeth. Every threat, every manipulated contract, every sabotaged deal." I projected the evidence onto the boardroom screen. Emails, recorded conversations, sworn statements from suppliers and property owners. 3 years of careful documentation of her campaign against me. You could have just accepted me, I said as she sank into a chair, watching her carefully constructed world crumble. Could have given me a chance to prove myself. Instead, you decided I wasn't good enough for your son or your social circle. So you tried to break me. The board members were reviewing the evidence with growing concern. Elizabeth's actions hadn't just been personal. They'd been unethical and potentially illegal. What do you want? Elizabeth finally asked, her voice hollow. I want what I've earned, I replied. Control of this company, a chance to modernize it, expand it, make it better than it ever was under your leadership. And I want you to understand exactly how it feels to have everything taken away by someone you underestimated. Marcus began distributing the severance agreements we prepared. You can exit gracefully, I told Elizabeth. Keep your social standing, your country club memberships, your place in society. Or you can fight, and I'll release everything I have to the press. Your choice. Her hands shook as she read the documents. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I learned from the best, I said. You taught me that patience and careful planning are everything in business. That sometimes you have to let your opponent think they're winning before you make your final move. The next hour was a blur of signatures and legal terminology. Elizabeth signed everything put in front of her, her perfect makeup failing to hide her devastation. By 10:30, she was no longer CEO of Montgomery Cosmetics. As she stood to leave, she turned to James one last time. She planned this all along, she said bitterly. She married you to get to me. James shook his head. No, Mother. I married her because I loved her. You're the one who turned it into a war. And you lost. After Elizabeth left, the board quickly approved the transition plan we developed. By noon, I was officially CEO of Montgomery Cosmetics, with a mandate to modernize and expand the company. That evening, James and I sat in our home office, processing everything that had happened. I wish you'd told me sooner, he said quietly. I needed to protect you, I explained, and I needed your reactions to be genuine. Your mother had to believe you knew nothing. He nodded slowly. What happens now? Now we rebuild. Both the company and our family, but on different terms. Over the next few months, Montgomery Cosmetics underwent a transformation. We launched new product lines, modernized our marketing, and expanded into international markets. The stock price soared. Elizabeth retreated to her country house, emerging only occasionally for carefully selected social events. The whispers followed her, about how her Chinese-American daughter-in-law had outmaneuvered her, taken her company, proven herself more than worthy of the Montgomery name. A year later, I sat in what had been Elizabeth's office, reviewing quarterly reports. The company was thriving, our market share growing. The phone rang, Elizabeth's number. I understand now, she said without preamble. What I did to you, what it feels like. That was the point, I replied. The company, it's doing better than ever. Yes. A long pause. Perhaps I was wrong. About you. About everything. I thought about the years of pain she caused, the nights I'd spent crying over her sabotage, the careful planning it had taken to turn it all around. Yes, I said simply. You were. Another pause. James mentioned you're expecting. A girl. Due in March. I would like to be part of her life. If you'll allow it. I looked at the family photo on my desk. James and me at last year's company gala, both smiling genuinely for the first time in years. We can try, I said carefully, but things will be different. No manipulation, no games, no trying to control everything. I understand, she said quietly. You've certainly proved you're stronger than I thought. After we hung up, I walked to the window, looking out over the city. Elizabeth had spent years trying to prove I wasn't good enough for her family or her company. In defeating her, I proved her right. I wasn't just good enough, I was better. The company flourished under my leadership, expanding into new markets and product lines. James found his own strength, starting a charitable foundation that worked to support small businesses affected by corporate bullying. And Elizabeth? She learned what it meant to be on the other side of power, to have to ask instead of demand, to accept instead of control. Sometimes, at family gatherings, I catch her watching me, not with the old contempt, but with something like respect. She's learned that true power isn't about destroying others to maintain control. It's about building something stronger from the ashes of what others tried to destroy.